There are a lot of lenses out there, and choosing the right one for what you need can be confusing. In this video, we're going to go through a range of budget APS-C lenses for different types of shooting. First up is the Sigma 16mm f1.4. This wide-angle autofocus lens has been a staple for APS-C cameras for a good while now, and that is for a pretty good reason. The 16mm focal length means that it's very wide and you'll fit more in your shot with the camera closer. For example, I'm using it to record this video here. It's perfect for smaller spaces, small studios, bedroom shooting, whatever you need to do. So it's a really great video lens for YouTube when you're going to be using a tripod. Now, if you were using it much closer up, the 16mm focal length would make your facial features look much more exaggerated because you would have to have the lens so close to your face. So it's not really a portrait lens, but I find as long as you're not sat right up against the lens, it makes your face look great in vlog style content. This lens's low light performance is really very good due to that f1.4 widest aperture. It basically means it's letting a lot more light into the lens than lenses with a narrower maximum aperture. For example, you may have the 16 to 50mm kit lens, which has a widest aperture of f3.5, so that means it is significantly darker than this lens, the Sigma 16mm f1.4. What you need to look out for there is a lower f number, which means you'll get better low light performance. The autofocus is nice and fast on this lens and should always be able to keep up with what you're filming. The autofocus can be a little loud, you can hear that motor a little bit, but in most situations it's not noticeable. So unfortunately this lens isn't the cheapest on the list, costing around $450 still on Amazon after all these years. But have a look out on eBay and other secondhand retailers as you will likely get it much cheaper. The Sigma 16mm f1.4 is an amazing wide-angle lens still after all these years after its release, and is a perfect upgrade from the kit lens for people who don't need zoom and want a sharp wide-angle image. It's also worth noting Sigma also produces f1.4 lenses for other focal lengths such as 30mm and 56mm, so if that 16mm is too wide for your needs, have a look at these, they're just as sharp. Now, it's worth noting all the full reviews of the lenses covered in this video are on the channel. So if you're enjoying and want to see them, please subscribe to the channel and drop a like on the video. It really does help me out a lot knowing what types of videos you guys like. Also, links to buy all these lenses featured in the video will be in the description below. So next up is something quite different, and that is the Sigma 16 to 300mm f3.5 to 6.7. If you're after just one lens that can handle just about everything from landscapes to portraits to wildlife to sports, the Sigma 16 to 300mm f3.5 to 6.7 is a strong contender. It's all-in-one super zoom made for APS-C cameras with a huge 19 times zoom range that goes from wide angle to super telephoto. Basically, it's built for travel, everyday shooting, or basically all types of shooting without having to pack separate lenses. Build-wise, it's plastic and a bit chunky at 615 grams, certainly one of the biggest lenses we're looking at today, but it does have weather sealing and optical stabilization, which helps out a lot. The autofocus is fast and accurate and pretty much silent, even when you're zoomed all the way in. The image quality is pretty sharp, especially at 16mm, though the edges soften a bit, and you'll see some vignetting and fringing at the widest aperture. It's not perfectly sharp all the way through to 300mm, but seeing as this is such an all-round, all-in-one lens, you're obviously not going to get absolutely perfect sharpness all the way through. So it's not the sharpest or the brightest of lenses, but to be honest, if you're after just having a camera with one lens, you really must think about this as a strong contender, as it covers nearly all the bases. There are some smaller lenses for general use that we will come to, but overall the Sigma 16 to 300mm is really hard to beat. Unfortunately, it does cost around $700, so it's definitely pushing itself out of that budget range. But if you think that you would only need one lens to do it all, then all of a sudden this one-stop solution's price seems a little bit more reasonable. Not perfect, but it's definitely the most flexible lens on this lineup, being able to take you all the way from super close-ups to super zoomed in, all in one lens. Now let's move on to the smaller all-round lens that I mentioned just before, another Sigma, and it's the 18 to 50mm f2.8. Now this lens is another zoom, but much more compact than the one we just talked about, with a range of 18 to 50mm and a constant maximum aperture of f2.8. This means that the blurry backgrounds and low light performance is consistent all the way through the zoom range. This is an autofocus lens but doesn't have in-lens stabilization, and it's also not a power zoom lens, meaning that it can only be controlled on the barrel rather than in camera. This lens costs around $500, so again, clearly not the cheapest, but what this lens is excellent for is a replacement for that 16 to 50mm kit lens that your camera may have well come with. It covers all the same focal range but is much sharper and has significantly better low light performance. This is a fantastic all-rounder if you want something suitable for travel and all different types of shooting, but is much more pocket-sized compared to the 16 to 300mm we just talked about. Again, that wide maximum aperture of f2.8 makes it a great low-light performer and gives you great professional-looking out-of-focus backgrounds. It can work well for portraits and all types of shooting. The image quality is sharp, and that wide aperture means that low-light performance for videos and photography is great. All a massive upgrade from that 16 to 50mm kit lens that your camera likely came with. Of course, it doesn't have stabilization, which is a bit of a shame, which means that you will need to be a little bit more careful when taking video. But for photography, especially street photography and travel photography, as I mentioned, the flexible zoom range means that it is a fantastic lens for those use cases. It's a perfect all-round choice if you want a single compact system. So next up, we're going to talk about a prime lens, a fixed focal length at 35mm, an f1.7 lens from Viltrox. So this lens is one of the cheaper lenses on our list at just $180. One of the downsides up front, again, is no image stabilization, but other than that, it is a pretty remarkable lens for the price. It's a very lightweight lens at just 170 grams and also has a very compact form factor. This is a 35mm lens designed for APS-C cameras, but it will give you a full frame equivalent zoom of around 52mm, which means that it puts it in that very versatile focal length, which makes it an excellent choice for portraits and street photography. The autofocus is quick, and whilst not silent, it is still very impressive for the low price of this lens. The image quality is also impressive for a camera of this price. Wide open at f1.7, it's sharp in the center of images and is surprisingly good at the edges. And now it does get softer as you stop down, but overall you're going to be pretty impressed with the quality of this lens. It also lends itself fantastically to shooting indoors for YouTube videos and similar at a much lower price point than the 16mm Sigma lens we looked at the start of this video. In summary, the Viltrox 35mm f1.7 is a high-quality, budget-friendly lens offering sharp images, great autofocus, and strong low-light performance, all for the super low price of $180. A fantastic, properly budget lens on this list. Worth noting that Viltrox also has very similar lenses at 56mm and 15mm, making the lens range very similar to the Sigma 16, 30 and 56mm mentioned earlier in this video, but at a much more beginner-friendly price point. They're all around $180. So next up, let's look at a really low-budget option, the Viltrox 28mm f4.5, which is a tiny little lens at just 1.5 centimeters thick and weighs just 60 grams. Now, it is a full-frame autofocus pancake lens, but don't let that put you off. It's perfect, in fact, probably better for APS-C cameras. It's perfect for travel, street photography, and just about everyday shooting with zero bulk. If you're pairing it with a really small camera body, like, say, the Sony a5100 or the ZV-E10, then you are going to have something that will fit not only in a pocket, but in a really small pocket. You get all this for just $99. So yes, it's by far the most affordable lens on this list. I'm sorry they've not all been super budget friendly, but the reality is that lenses are pretty expensive at the moment. So if you want something fun that is really quite cheap, this at $99 is fantastic. And the extra bonuses, it's got autofocus for that price, which is fantastic. The build quality, of course, is mostly plastic, but it keeps it cheap. And it even has the lens cap built into the lens, so it doesn't even get any bigger with a lens cap on. Now, the specifications, of course, aren't going to blow you away. So fixed focal length of 28mm with a fixed f4.5 aperture. So obviously it's not great in low light, and you're not going to get much background blur. But for general daytime shooting, it is surprisingly sharp image quality, and with only a little bit of softness and vignetting around the edges. Using it on an APS-C camera, as I definitely recommend, it actually shapes up pretty nicely. You lose most of that vignetting because that would be cut off. It gives it a 42mm equivalent field of view, which, as I mentioned, cuts out the majority of those softer corners. The autofocus is quiet and reasonably quick and totally fine for casual shooting. This is a really great little compact street photography lens if you are trying to just blend into the background. And to be honest, for $99, a lens this small is hard to complain about those downsides, like the darker aperture. It is a perfect, true pocket-sized lens that won't weigh you down. Ideal for travel, street photography, and minimalist setups where you really are trying to travel as light as possible. So, of course, there are many other lenses I could have covered. Any in particular that you think are an obvious miss, let me know in the comments. These are some of my recommendations for upgrading from the kit lens. They cover all different types of shooting, from landscapes to portraits to super zoom photography, and are all excellent choices to upgrade from the kit lens on your APS-C camera journey.